Good evening, everyone. This is Dave Stanley from the Spiritual Journey. I host the Spiritual Journey, and I have with me tonight a very special astrophysicist, Jeff Zweerink. Is that right?
That is correct. Very well done.
Oh, great. Okay. Um, Now Jeff has been working in the Antarctic with balloons. Yes, I believe he's in competition with NASA because NASA's got lots of balloons down there, and I don't know how big uh, Jeff's balloons were, but I'm really dying to hear what you have to say. Just to as a prelude, let me state that I saw Jeff doing an interview with Mike Sargent on the subject of flat Earth. And I've actually given Mike Sargent an interview myself, and we sat down together. This was all live, and we color coded the entire flat Earth system. So you might find that video interesting. Yes. It's all color coded. Um, and at the in that interview, um, Jeff was talking about Antarctic and his balloons. And I was immediately interested because, as most people that know about the flat Earth or um, believe in the globe know, um, it's difficult to get to Antarctica if you don't have permission. You've got to have permission, and there you can be a tourist or be a scientist or do whatever you want. But it's having the permission that's important because of the Antarctic Treaty. Since since the year that I was born, yeah. So I've been excluded from that all my life. Yes, Antarctic. So perhaps Jeff, without any further ado, sorry for the long intro. Um, you could tell us about your experiment, your balloon experiment down in the Antarctic or across in the Antarctic.
hmm
Yes.
Yeah, so we actually it was a NASA balloon. It was a mission funded by largely by NASA. It was an international collaboration. There were people from Italy, people from Japan. So it was, like you said, an international collaboration. A lot of people from the United States working on it. And it was a balloon experiment where we are looking to find evidence of dark matter. And so that's what's cool about it. We can explore what all that is. But the reason we were down in Antarctica is because you want to fly it on a balloon. Ideally, we'd like to have this up in space because the particular thing we're looking for is an antiparticle. And if you know a little bit of physics, the problem looking for antiparticles is that they immediately, anytime they counter a normal particle, they annihilate. And so you got to get to where way up above the atmosphere. So we flew our balloon up at 120,000 feet. It was launched in December of 2025. It flew for 25 days. We've got lots of data, numbers of terabytes worth of data. We're in the process of analyzing it now, but we spent the Antarctic summer of 2024-25 getting set up to fly, and it actually flew in the Antarctic summer of 25-26. I got to go down in 2024 or 2024 to help put the instrument together. And so it was just a lot of fun working on the project, neat seeing Antarctica, and really neat to see the balloon fly. And now just in the process of analyzing the data from it.
And so you had lots of help from NASA or just a little bit?
Well, I mean, so NASA funds the project. NASA's part of how you telemeter data to the ground and off to the United States, where we collect all the data. NASA has its fingers in a lot of that. Because they've got some of the infrastructure, we've got some of the infrastructure, and working all that together. There was no particular NASA scientist who was working on our project, but we're interfacing with them because they're providing the funding for a lot of the project.
Ah, great. Do you have any results from that project at the moment?
None that we can discuss. I mean, like I said, it was about a month and a half ago, or about 2 months ago, where the balloon flight finally ended. We're in the process of getting the data back and just working through the analysis. We've done some preliminary checks and things. The data looks pretty good, but it's just going to take a long time of sifting through all the data. We took 500 million events. We're looking for a handful that would be signatures of dark matter. So it's just a intricate process in making sure we do it well before we say anything, because the result, if we find anything, would be very important to the scientific community, because scientists have been wondering, what in the world dark matter? I mean, we know it exists because you find the evidence for it when you look out in the cosmos. What particle it is, that's hard to find, and so that's what we're hoping to provide an answer to.
Great. Okay. Did you get to see the 24-hour sun whilst you were down there?
I did. That was one of the weird things. So we got down there. It was November was when I was down there, and you during the day everything's fine. You go to bed at night. You've got the blinds that you pull down on your windows because it's still light out, and
Yeah.
I had a little bit of a stuffy nose, so I'd get up, midnight, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you get up, walk down the hall to go to the bathroom, and it's still just as light out as it's always been. And so it was really interesting and cool to see that. It dawned on me on the plane flight home that as watching out the window on the plane flight, that beginning to see the sunset, and I realized I haven't seen this now for nearly 3 weeks. And so it was really pretty cool to see. And lo and behold, it's about estimating about 20, 30 degrees off the horizon, and it just kind of moved around. You could watch it and see it at different places during the day. So it was really fascinating to watch.
Yeah. I followed the Flat Earth team when they went down there
Hmm.
and they saw it.
Right.
So I took Witsit's word for it that there's a 24-hour sun. Um, I was half expecting a 24-hour sun because there are lots of theories that the 24-hour sun exists on a flat Earth. So, and that was before they went down there. And now
Hmm.
there's proof of you as well. And I believe there's somebody else going down there from the Flat Earth community pretty soon, but he won't be doing any experiments. He'll be doing a marathon. Yes, they
Oh, wow.
they seem to have a lot of marathons down there, and he's like one of the big champions, and it's one of the things he wants to do. Um, so
That's funny.
so he'll hopefully he'll be wearing a Flat Earth t-shirt.
Uh,
Yeah.
I have to say, what the among the things I enjoyed seeing the 24-hour, it was daylight whenever I was awake, and that was kind of cool. A couple other features that I just find fascinating about Antarctica is, one is the place where we were located, as we've got the buildings that they drag around on the ice, and so when you look out the front door of the building, you're looking at Mount Erebus, which is the southernmost active volcano in the world, and so we had a few clear days where you could see the mountains smoking. And so there's this volcano that's a 12,000 foot peak right outside where we're looking. But the thing I think that stood out to me the most is that, except for the people that you saw, and there were a few birds and sea lions, there was nothing living down there that you could see. There were no bugs, there was no moss, there were no weeds, there was no grass. It was just, for as spectacular as the scenery was, it was almost devoid of life, except for, like I said, you saw sea lions, you saw penguins, and you saw some birds. And outside of that, it was the people and anything that we brought down from the other six continents. So it was really pretty remarkable.
It sounds amazing. Yeah, I wanted to go last year, but well, finances stopped me.
I could understand that.
Yeah, it's something like 41,000 for a round trip, yeah,
Okay.
or something like that. Something very expensive.
Right.
Something beyond my budget. Yeah, so
Well, there's not a lot of hotels down there, so there's not a lot of places to stay. Well, I mean, it's there. It's effectively there are kind of bases. There's a U.S. base that we were on. There was a New Zealand base in the particular area where we were, and so there's a lot of stuff put in place to save or to protect the Antarctic region for scientific exploration and to not have people just be moving around and doing things as they would please. So I do appreciate the fact that they recognize the scientific and scenic and nature aspect of Antarctica and are working to try and protect that. So
Right. Where were you down there? What was it?
I
Murdoch?
was at McMurdo Station, which is
McMurdo.
on Ross
Yeah,
Island, more or less. I don't know that it's directly south of, but it's you go through New Zealand to get there. So
that's great. Um, do you think it would have been possible to do your experiment in the North Pole?
well, one of the challenges you have in the North Pole is that there's no land up there. So whereas Antarctica being at the South Pole is actually land mass, that makes things a little bit easier because things don't shift around as much. Um, given what we're doing, we wanted our experiment to fly up above the atmosphere, and also at the North and the South Pole, you have certain magnetic configurations because of the way the magnetic field works on Earth. So in principle, were there the facilities to do it, I think it would have worked at the North Pole as well.
You say there's no land in the North Pole?
That is correct. There's ice in Antarctica, but there's also
Yeah,
land underneath that. There's a continent underneath
yeah,
it. Whereas at the North Pole, it's just floating ice up there. There's no, I mean, outside of you get down below the ocean and then there's land down at the bottom of the ocean, but there's no continent up there.
yeah. It's I hear it's kind of difficult to get up there as well. But they say there's a lot more life, plant life and bird life and perhaps insects. Um,
Could be. I mean, it is a little tough for insects to live in that cold of a region, just simply because. So we were there. Like I said, I was there in November, which was just coming into the Antarctic summer, and the temperatures were in the mid-teens Fahrenheit. So 10 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit most of the time. It got a little colder at times. That's a tough environment for an insect to live, just because you have to generate enough heat to keep yourself warm, and something that small is going to lose heat very quickly. So I don't know that insects would live up in the Arctic region either, just because of that issue.
well, I've seen videos where I think Eskimos or the people that live up there, the people,
Hmm.
they were covered with mosquitoes. Yeah,
Yeah, no, that would at some level that wouldn't surprise me, because if you have things that can generate heat, you can have bugs or insects that would live around that. So I don't know that that's that surprising to me, but
yeah,
like I said, given how devoid the Antarctic was of life, there wasn't a lot of places where bugs could live. Now, maybe if you get down around where the sea lions were and the various things that, there's waste products. So there may have been insects around there. The whole time I was down there, I did not see one insect. So
right. Okay, super. So, um, did you hear about what happened in when was it? January 2025. There was Dr. Shiva Ayajuri
hmm
had an interview with David Weiss, and he challenged, well, he said to him he could settle the debate once and for all. Yes.
hmm
And my ears picked up straight away. I thought, well, I mean, this is a guy, MIT, PhD, very intelligent, very smart, and he says he can settle the debate straight away. I listened, and
hmm
did you hear about that? That
You sent a link to a video, and so I watched that video. I don't know anything more about it than what's in the video itself.
right? Okay.
I haven't taken much time beyond that to investigate what might have gone on there.
Well, um, before I go into that, have your views about the flat Earth changed at all over the past couple of years?
Not really. I'm curious, what might you see in what I've done that would have prompted me to think otherwise? Because I can't say I've been thinking about flat Earth stuff for probably 6, 7, 8 years, not intensively, but I forget when the interaction with Mark Sargent was, but I spent some time thinking about it then. What would I, how do I evaluate the evidence out there? What is the evidence for? I'm still convinced the Earth is a globe, but I do actively think about things and, you know, things that are of interest to me. I investigate the new evidence that comes in. So what in particular drives that question, if you will?
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, back onto the story with uh, Dr. Shiva
Hmm.
Ajurai, Ajurai. He he said today that he could settle the argument once and for all, and that what he could do, he said, David, you can trust me. You know I'll be fair with you. Um, yeah, you know I'm really straight up and everything. You can trust me. What we'll do is we'll get two teams together. You choose your team, 10
Hmm.
flat earthers, and I'll get together 10 MIT scientists, and we'll get them together in where was it? In his MIT classroom, get them all
Hmm.
around a table, and they would work out one experiment, just one experiment that they'd all work on. They decide that that's the experiment to prove that the Earth was either flat or a globe.
Hmm.
And he said, and then we'll get it peer reviewed, you know, in the magazines,
Right.
published and everything. And I thought this is brilliant, you know. I didn't think that. I just took him at his word that it would be totally honest and fair, and there would be 10 flat earthers, a team led by David
Hmm.
Weiss, and a team led by him, and they would decide on this one experiment.
Hmm.
It didn't quite go like that because
Right.
they made a public agreement, the two of them, to get together, and all David had to do, David Weiss, was contact um, Shiva, and they'd set up a date. And they had a provisional date, which was June the 15th or June the 13th. Yeah. Um,
Hmm.
and that would be the start date. And they would get the people together and find that one experiment and then go through that experiment. And 1 month later, go through the experiment again. And then a month later, go for everything again, get it published, peer reviewed. I thought that was brilliant because at that time, I was only a 99% flat earther.
Hmm.
There's always that little thing. I've got a lot of sympathy for people who believe in the globe, and so that 1/10 is really my skeptical sympathy for people that do believe that the world is a globe. Um, and I mean, it's a genuine skeptical sympathy
Hmm.
because I can understand why they have these problems. Yes, namely indoctrination and belief. Anyway, I was waiting and waiting for news about this, and so a couple of months later, I contacted David Weiss, and I said, "What's happening with this experiment?" And he said, "Oh, have you seen all the videos about mind shock? Yeah, how mind shock looked at exactly what Dr. Shiva said, you know, he
Hmm.
was saying, oh, it had to be in a certain way, had to be the scientific method, and he had to know everything about the scientific method. But during the interview, he seemed to um, not really understand the scientific method. And Mindshot was pointing out all the mistakes that Dr. Shiva was making. And the consensus was really from flat earthers that it was going nowhere, that he would never get back to them, that, it was just dead in the water. And when I contacted Dave Weiss, because I was really expecting, because I really wanted to know, I wanted to be 100% flat earther, and this would be the proof, peer reviewed. So I got back to David Weiss, and he said, no. He said, have you seen the videos about him? He said, he hasn't got back to me. I've contacted him, I've contacted his assistant, and it's just complete silence. And that was the video that I sent you, that 10-minute video. That was the video talking about the period really from January to past June. So he didn't get back to him. And I said, look, what I've done is I've contacted Dr. Shiva myself. Yes. I do have academic qualifications, so I thought he'd, be open to talking to me. And I got in touch with his society, and his political society, and I was invited to a webinar. And then I got a phone call from his assistant, and that was very surprising. His assistant's name is Michael Griffiths. And we had a long chat on the telephone, and he didn't really believe that the Earth was flat. He was more motivated by the political potential that Shiva gave him. He was the global leader, if you like, for the UK, and we passed many emails between us, many text messages on the phone, and he said to me, David, if you can get a team together and you can come up with an experiment that you can all agree on an experiment, then I will make sure that Shiva gets the experiment, and this is all done properly. So he was on our side. So I contacted David Weiss again.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I appreciate the story. I'm curious, what can I weigh in on this? I assume you're going to ask me a question. I'm trying to figure out what is it that I can weigh in on this, because interesting story, but I don't know that I have anything to say on it. So
yeah, well, it's rather a long story, but okay, I'll cut it really short. In the end, Dr. Shiva changed all the rules, and so David Weiss wasn't allowed to get a team of 10 flat earthers together. Shiva chose the flat earthers that he wanted, which were a team of weak flat earthers together, and he put them up against really anti-flat earthers in another team, and perhaps he had one MIT scientist, or maybe two.
Okay.
Yes. And then from there, he just he completely lied about David Weiss. He said that David Weiss did not contact him. That is why he changed the rules, and that's a complete lie. Yeah, I was in contact with him. We had all the supporting information, the emails and everything, but he lied, and he lied to the world, and it was so deceptive. The whole thing was so deceptive, and it went nowhere. So he didn't solve anything. But I just wanted your opinion as an educated man on why he would lie about David Weiss, why he wouldn't wouldn't allow David Weiss to get the team together to present the experiment we wanted to, and we had the experiment that we wanted, but Shiva would not allow the man who created the experiment to be part of the team at the summit. Yeah, all of these things, it was so deceptive and so lying. Why would he lie that much? I mean, he's a presidential candidate, and there he is lying to the world. Why would he do that if the world was really a globe and it was easy to prove?
Well, so you're asking me to weigh in on a subject where I don't actually have the details. And one
Yeah.
of the things that I have learned as a scientist is that it's important for me to understand more about a situation before I come to any sort of conclusion or even really develop a model of what I have. And so if I were to apply that to this situation here, right now, the data I have at hand is your description of the sequence. I have watched a little bit of or I watched the video. I think I watched it twice. Um, and that's really the extent of what I have. And so now you're asking, so your question is, why would he do X, Y, or Z? Well, in order to answer that, I have to have an adequate understanding of what's going on. And so among the explanations that I would explore, and why I say explore is I have a number of models of what I think might be going on, what could be going on. And as a scientist, before I say, oh, this is what's going on, it's incumbent upon me to actually go out and to test and see which of those are correct. So I'll just lay out a couple of ideas that I think might be that are consistent with the data I have at this point. That it may well be, I'll be, for a little more obnoxious to a little more, no, I'm going to go a little more reasonable to maybe a little more obnoxious. One is that there's anytime you have two people that are working with different ideas, it's likely to have just a lot of miscommunication, and maybe either your language and his language don't line up. And so where you think he's lying, he thinks he's communicating clearly. Where you think you've understood, he doesn't. So it could just be a miscommunication. That's a possibility of what might be going on.
Oh, could
It,
I just
well,
interject?
let
Okay,
me articulate my three
okay,
position, or I'll just give three.
yeah,
It could be that there's a process that was going along, and what Dr. Shiva wanted to happen, he's thinking, hey, we could do this, and then recognizes that at the end of the day, there's political pressures he faces in the school, there's time pressures on his time, and he just moves to this one because it's quicker and more expedient. And there's other things that he wants to do because his primary job is to do research in other areas. So one is just miscommunication. One is there are just time pressures and less interest. And it could be that he's got an agenda that he's trying to do and he's manipulating things into his agenda. As far as the data I have at this point, all three of those are reasonable conclusions for me to draw. Now, as a scientist, my job, before I weigh in and say which of those I think is right, is to go in and explore what sorts of things could I do to look at that would differentiate? Is it miscommunication? Is it there was just different priorities? And where is it that there's an agenda and deception? And that would be, for me to weigh in on that, that's what I would have to go do. And I haven't done any of that. So I'm not going to be able to weigh in and say, oh, this is why he did, because I don't have an adequate understanding yet. And as a scientist, I need to go get that before I weigh in.
okay. So we're going to run out of time in a couple of minutes, but
Right.
I'll send you another link and we'll have a part two. Just to finish on what you said, um, uh, I was speaking to Dr. Shiva on his X account, and he invited me to send me his my bio, and so I sent him my bio, and
Hmm.
then he said, "Go to the webinar today," and I had all and I'll see you there, basically, or that's what I believed. And so I went to the webinar, and he wasn't there. And I went back to X and I said, "Oh, well, you're not there." And I went back to the webinar, and suddenly he appeared. Now, I listened to his opening. He was very, very anti flat Earth,
Hmm.
and I had my hand up like this. I wanted to talk, and rather than let me talk at all, don't forget he had invited me to the webinar. Rather than let me talk, he just slagged down everything he could about flat earthers.
Hmm.
Yeah, saying that, really, really bad things. And then he said, get out of there. Yeah. And he said,
Okay. Yeah.
moderator, just take him away. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, there was a slight communication problem. He just
Well,
wouldn't.
no, I mean, so now you're bringing in new data, and like I said,
Yeah.
one of the things that I also have to recognize, I work in an organization. I have things that I want to promote and that I think are true and I want to tell people about. So I talk that way. Now I try and do things in a way where I'm being accurate and true, or communicating truthfully and having integrity. I mean, by default, I assume that is true of you. So there's no, please don't hear this statement as, oh, I think you're trying to lie to me. But part of my job is to recognize people may do that, and so I would go and investigate that. I would assume you're telling the truth, but go investigate and look at myself to see is that's correct there. And so, it like I said, one of my potential explanations is that he's kind of being political and trying to drive an agenda and being a little obnoxious. That would, if your description is correct, that would tend to weigh evidence in favor of that rather than miscommunication. So that's what I love about science is that it trains us how to think and analyze carefully so that we come to the proper conclusion.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because what he didn't know is I had a video screensaver,
Hmm.
and so I could video capture the webinar. Unfortunately, I only managed to get a couple of minutes of the webinar before my data blocked up. Yeah, but I can send you that with the date and everything. Um, and what I really like Dr. Shiva to do is release that webinar and the way he was, because he acted like a mad dictator. He really did. That is about as honest I can be. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe, like I said, if I'm candid, I just don't have a lot of interest in investigating that. There's enough other things that I do. I think it's an interesting discussion. I enjoy. I'm looking forward to our second half of our conversation, and I think kind of some discussion of why you're flat Earth, why I'm globe Earth. I think that would be an interesting discussion to have. But I guess the question I would have is, even if he is just kind of, I'll use the pejorative because I don't know whether he is, but even if he is a political slime ball. What does that have to do with whether the Earth is flat or whether it's a globe? Is that really evidence one way or the other?
He could have just been honest, um, as per his public agreement with David Weiss. He could have just been
Yeah.
straightforward. Yeah, he could have done this. But did you say he might be a political slime ball?
I said just for the sake. No, I did not say that because I don't know what he is, and
Okay.
I don't want to do that. I'm saying my question was even if he is just trying to manipulate and contrive and do all of that,
Yeah.
some people are just like that. I don't see how that weighs in on this question of whether the Earth is flat or whether it's a globe. There are people who are slimy on the flat Earth side, and there are people who are slimy on the globe side. That's just the way people are. That I think is what the Bible describes of people. Some will be slimy, and that's just the nature of the world we live in. I don't see that. That's not scientific evidence one way or the other in my book. That's all I was saying.
Life is a slippery slope wherever you are. Okay. I think we're gonna have to wrap it up here.
Okay.
So in part two, we can discuss this further. Um, the reason I'm a flat earther basically is because I've what changed my mind is I was like 50-50, and then I remembered something and I thought, well, that tips the scale. And so I decided to paint my world as flat. Yeah, because it was like 50-50. So I because for every thesis there's an antithesis, yeah,
Hmm.
and every thesis that the flat Earth puts forward, the globe puts forward an antithesis, and vice versa, yeah, and because of that, I decided to paint my view of the world as flat to better understand it, and the more I understood it, yeah, the more it's you know and I can say thank you to Dr. Shiva because I was only a 99% um, flat earther, but after his lies and deception, it was up to 99.9%. So really, thank you, Dr. Shiva. Yes. So
See, what's interesting is for as strong as you believe in the flat Earth, I am probably that or more convinced that the Earth is a globe. And
yeah,
I think it would be interesting to have a discussion. My guess is we're going to get down to the end of the discussion. You're still going to believe it's a flat Earth. I'm going to still be a globe. But I do think clarifying what are the evidence, why do we think that, what weighs into that, what do we give? I think that would be a fascinating discussion. So
yeah, okay. So we can continue with that in part two. I don't know when this is going to finish, but I should imagine in a couple of moments. So rather than just being cut off, let's finish it there, and I'll say bye for now and see you in part two.
sounds
Okay.
good.
So bye for now, Jeff.
Bye.